Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Her Space, the podcast that creates footprints for a purposeful life. Before we dive into this episode, I would like to take a moment to appreciate you for tuning in. Her Space podcast has a vision of becoming the number one health, wellness, and spiritual podcast in Africa and beyond. And you too can be a part of this journey. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to click that subscribe button, like this episode, and share your thoughts in the comment section below. We value your contributions as they help us grow. Thank you for being a part of this. In today's episode, we are joined by Coach Rahina Idris. The beautiful coincidence is not lost in me that we share the same surname. Coach
Okay,
Rahina,
mashallah.
mashallah, yeah. And I hope it's a sign that the conversation we're going to have is going to be fire, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah, Coach Rahina is a life coach who helps women unlock their potential, navigate life's challenges with ease, and achieve personal and financial growth, all while minimizing stress. Wow, that's a lot on your plate. Building building confidence and resilience. Coach Rahina, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah. So, confidence is a concept that we hear about a lot. Probably at some point in all our lives, we've been told to be bold, be confident, and all of that. Um, so, probably for most people, I know for me, I know who my poster child for confidence is. When I hear the word confidence, I know who comes to mind. I'm sure
Yeah.
for a lot of people is the same.
Mm.
But I'm wondering, from your professional point of view, having worked with women to achieve this, to achieve that state of being confident, what does it really mean? Could you paint a picture for us what confidence really means?
Okay. So, confidence is having a strong belief in oneself. And I think it's just having that conviction that in one's abilities, in one's strengths, and even to an extent being able to understand your weaknesses and know how to leverage on your weaknesses. But most importantly, confidence really means having that strong belief in one's abilities and strengths. Like just like you said, it's just that idea of being able to have some sense of some sort of faith in oneself, and reducing the level of doubt in one's abilities.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think that's an absolutely brilliant answer because I loved how you were able to bring about it's not just even believing in yourself. Like believing in yourself is one side of it, but also knowing your limitations, knowing that I'm weak when it comes to this. Um, I think that brings us, it takes us to a deeper meaning to it. I think it just brings about to our awareness that you need to know yourself to be confident because if you know your strengths, you should be able to know your weakness. But you also talked about how it's a strong belief in oneself. And I'm wondering because most of our lives, I think the idea of believing in yourself, it might have been said to us one way or another, but I think the
Mhm.
realities that surround us has caused us to doubt ourselves in so many ways. Um,
Mhm.
I think right from, say, childhood, let's say the school system, for example, when it comes to
Mhm.
failure and, people who excel in academics will find that constantly people that will um I don't like to use the word failure, but let's just go with it. Constantly people that
Mhm.
would fail say it kind of bruises their belief in themselves because if I've tried something over and over again and I'm not doing
Mhm.
well in it, it just turns into I'm not good at it. And every time, even in my adulthood, I'm faced with the I'm placed in a position where I have to do something similar. I just know deep down that I'm not good at it. So how can I how can I differentiate between knowing my weakness
Mhm.
and and then being aware of the failure? Is it failure or is it that I'm weak in this? How can we differentiate that?
Okay. Interesting question. Um, Most of our beliefs are strengthened or weakened from childhood. When
Mm,
we talk about self-worth or confidence, usually it's shaped from childhood for a lot of people as a result of, so many things we've been through, our background, things we've been told over and over again.
yeah,
Uh, that sort of shapes who we are. When a child is being told constantly that you're dumb or you're daft or you're not intelligent, definitely that is going to affect them over time.
yeah,
And it sort of shapes who they are. And as they grow older, they begin to believe all of those things. And when you look at it, where do we hear a lot of these things from? From the teachers, from people around us, from maybe even the parents,
yeah,
and those are the first role models that usually we have.
yeah.
So when someone goes through something over and over again, um, whether as a result of failure or weakness, as you put it, definitely it will bruise them. It will begin to affect how they feel and believe in themselves. But
Mm,
most times, I think because we're conditioned in a way that our mind sees is able to detect negativity much quicker than is able to detect positivity, um, we tend to think more in the negative because a lot of times, one might have gone through experiences that are not so good, and they failed in certain things. But in a lot of cases, I think we dwell more on the failure than we dwell on the passes or the positives. So most times when one goes through failure, you find out that they dwell on that and they focus all their energy and their attention on the fact that they're not good at this particular thing. But we are all unique in different ways. And most times, if you sit that person down and have them think deeper, they will have a lot more positive things that are working for them in their lives than the ones that they're failing. But like I said, because our mind is designed in such a way that it picks up negativity more than it does positivity. So when that happens, you start to feel that that person starts to believe that they're not capable in all areas rather than that particular thing. So I'll give a context to this. For example, let's say that and I'll even give a live example. I remember having to stand in front of my school, where we read newspaper. We come up with the news and they choose one person and then you have to like read the news in front of the school. And I think for me, I've had so many opportunities on the stage where I danced, I did drama, I did fashion shows, in school, and but it was just in primary, secondary. And I remember I think in SS1 when our principal introduced that concept, and I had to stand for the first time and present a paper. I remember like coming off stage, everybody was saying like, "Oh, Rahina, even your skirt was shaking." Like my whole body, I felt like I was going to collapse.
yeah.
And that experience stayed with me without even realizing until much later in life. I just realized that, wow, that experience might have shaped how I saw public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I stayed off stage. Like anything I would do, to stay off stage, I would. Without but I didn't realize that I had a lot of strengths in me. I had so many other strengths. It was just that experience, that one incident that I projected onto my whole life. And I think that's what the mistake a lot of people do. They make a they are weak in one area, or they have an experience where they fail in a particular situation, but they project it in on onto their whole lives, and they start to live their lives based on that particular experience. So I think most importantly, how do we differentiate, back to your question, is to be able to isolate and understand that I've gone through an incident or an event doesn't mean that is my whole life. If one can begin to, differentiate that, it will make a whole lot of difference. If you go through a particular situation or an event where you fail at a certain area in your life, you should be able to isolate that event and see that event for what it is and be able to see the lessons and how you can improve in that area rather than begin to allow it to take full control of your whole life. So I think that's one of the big mistakes that we, including me, have done, in the past, that has shaped how I felt about myself or how we feel about ourselves. But once you begin to understand that, that's an experience, and it doesn't have to shape who you are. It's not your reality. It's not it's not really your life, but it's just an event. It
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier to
Mm.
handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant answer because it spoke to me. This topic, this whole topic of self doubt and confidence is something
Mm,
that resonates with me deeply because um, I'm a very self conscious person. I'm very bold in the sense
mm,
you know how you can't put one person into a particular box. So I think I'm
yes.
one of those people who's very self-conscious, but at the same
Mm,
time I can be very bold. I'm not afraid
yeah.
to speak out my ideas or bring
Yes.
out my ideas to life, but it's just I would fold at the mention of criticism. It's very easy for me to do that.
Yeah.
um, so when I heard you say that our mind usually maximizes, the
Mm,
negative experiences we have,
mm,
and
mm,
so much so that we tend to even forget the positives. I felt it
mm,
so deeply because when you were speaking about your experience in school, I could also reflect back and see
mm,
that I have so many incidents from my primary school and secondary school that I
mm,
can refer back to, and they're all
mm,
negative. And hardly ever do I sit down and reflect on when it actually went well. So
yeah.
I think that's really something for all of us to reflect on okay, fine, this happened and it went wrong. What about the
Mhm.
times that it went right? What happened then?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that answer. So, Coach
And I
Rahina,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
go on, please.
just before we move on, and I think it's important that even in the negative experiences, that sometimes we could draw lessons from those experiences. They
Yeah,
could be learning
absolutely.
curves. Yeah. For,
Absolutely.
a lot of times, we just focus on the fact that things have gone wrong, but
Yeah.
we don't go deeper to see that it's all part of the growth journey, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah,
like failure is like you are collecting data points for your success because you're
absolutely.
learning what not to do the next time so that it doesn't go that way again. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
Mm,
for that response.
yeah,
So, again, I think this should have even happened. This question should have come in the beginning
yeah,
because you've explained to us what confidence is.
mm,
And we sort of have a picture of what confidence looks like and what lack of confidence may look like, especially with the
mhm,
personal story you shared. Why is
mhm.
it even important for anyone to work on their confidence, especially a Muslimah? Why is it important for us to do that?
It's being confident is important because imagine living a life where you doubt yourself, where you lack faith in yourself. So if you lack faith in yourself, how do you push yourself forward? Because you have to have some sense of faith, the sort of something that holds, something that you're able to uphold, then sort of opens the door to the future. So if
Mm-hmm,
that door is actually closed, if you have barriers or limitations that you've placed on yourself, it's going to become a roadblock.
mm-hmm,
And when it becomes a roadblock, a lot of possibilities will come, a lot of possibilities, opportunities, and, for growth and for learning will come and go, and you'll possibly not see them.
Mm.
Um, because that feeling of doubt or uncertainty is there. A lot of times we don't know what's coming. We just have faith. As much as they say hope is not a strategy, but we definitely need some level of hope in our lives for us to be able to move forward. Imagine life without hope. Imagine life without faith. It's going to be hopeless, really.
Yeah.
so we need some level of confidence to be able to work through certain things, because when it comes to confidence, it's all about um, moving forward and taking certain actions to make things, to actualize your dreams, to be able to actualize your dreams. So
Mm-hmm.
if you live a life without confidence, so many things will come and pass you by. Honestly, you will not see them. Opportunities will come and go. You will not be able to see them, and you'll not be able to take those bold steps. Just as you mentioned, you said you might have those feelings, but then you're still bold enough to take certain steps. When there is the total lack of confidence, one is not able to take those calculated risks or bold steps in their lives. So confidence is really important because it sort of gives us it becomes like a compass for one to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a compass that sort of guides us in moving forward. And then it also increases our resilience. When you have confidence, in the face of challenges, you're able to still get up, because the most important thing is that we all know that at some point in our lives, we're definitely going to fall. That's just the basic reality of life. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to fall down. But resilience is what makes us get up despite those challenges that we've been through. And then self confidence can also help in, fostering better relationships, because better and healthier relationships with, people, with life. It helps you to have a better outlook towards life.
Yeah.
When you lack confidence, all of those things become a lot more difficult to navigate around. And then it also helps us to improve our self-worth, because when you lack self-worth, when you lack that belief in yourself, it sort of takes away a lot of things. It reduces motivation, and it also even affects our mental health. So confidence as a whole sort of gives us a better outlook towards life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really a brilliant answer. And like you summed it up to giving us a better life, generally. I see that, like I told you earlier, I don't put myself in the box of I'm not a confident person. I believe I'm a confident person,
Yeah.
but I also saw that while I'm confident in the face of, say, I can come out now and speak up, I'm not afraid
Mm,
to talk about things, to start new ideas in spite of what people
mm,
say or think. I have found that as a mother, my
mm,
confidence is quite shaken a lot. That has been the greatest test of my confidence. And it's not even in the relationship I have with my son one on one, but I found that because everyone has a perception of parenthood that they have in their lives, and there will be people who would tend to intrude in your own perception of parenthood or your own system.
mm,
And I've found that every time that happens, someone says something to my child that I'm not okay with, and I would like to speak up. I find that becomes a true test of my confidence, because then I start to think, do I really want to talk about this? Do I really want to start trouble? Even if I'm able to convey the message in the nicest of ways, sometimes
mm,
I fold and I run away. And it's forced me to constantly introspect and ask why, if you are not okay with it, why is it so difficult for you to speak against it and all of that. So I see your point when you
yeah.
say it affects your life. It's in every dimension of it. It's not just in
Absolutely.
your career, it's not just in
Yeah.
public speaking, it's in
Mhm.
everything, even the way you show up as a mother, as a wife, and so many
Mhm.
other things.
Yeah.
Um, so I
And I
was,
think
yeah,
it's quite interesting, when how you relate this to confidence to motherhood and speaking up for our kids, because we come, if you go back a bit in time, the culture that,
exactly, yeah.
where we find ourselves is, that, the culture of kunya,
Exactly.
where, yes, where you see things happening, but you're not able to speak up for it. Um, and we live
Yeah,
in a society where people can be insensitive towards others' feelings, where we lack empathy.
exactly, yeah.
And,
Hmm.
somebody can just look at a child. I mean, just yesterday we were discussing how it's so interesting how even in our society where we're all blacks, we are so racist even to
Yeah,
ourselves,
yeah.
where
Colorism
you
is a
have a
thing for
child,
us.
you have three. Exactly. You have three children, and people look at them and they're like, or you have maybe five children, they're like, oh, all of them are so fair, but how come this one is black,
Exactly, yeah.
And those things can really affect a child. They can affect the child's outlook on life. They can begin to affect their confidence.
Yeah.
They look at this one and they're like, oh, this one is fat, this one, it begins to affect, their self-worth,
Hmm.
which is very
Absolutely.
which is completely tied to our self-confidence, because self-worth and self-confidence are different, but they're
Hmm.
so interrelated that we sort of mix the two of them together. So one has to, I think, in that situation, you have to continue to reinforce your own beliefs, when it comes to your own child. Remind
Hmm.
them, of reinforce their beliefs, tell them, um, reinforce in a way that you tell them, you counter rather those things that people are telling them, and
Yeah.
you sort of help them boost their confidence, because I think this is so important. It
Hmm.
happens a lot in our society, and we have to learn as mothers to unapologetically speak up for our children,
Yeah.
without that feeling of, should I or should I not. It's really important, because long term it affects children. I remember my mom talks about how one of my sisters was, she's pretty now, mashallah.
Hmm.
But as a baby, apparently she was cute, but she was not the most beautiful baby. And somehow, people would, there was this particular woman that would come to our house and say things like, oh, that she was asking my mom, Inaikasan, where did you get this ugly baby? And my
Hmm.
sister sort of still remembers that.
Yeah.
Mashallah, some children can be not so cute as babies. And then as they grow older, people will be like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened? And she's actually one of those children.
Yeah.
As she grew older, she, mashallah, turned into a pretty woman.
Yeah.
But as a child,
Alhamdulillah.
people couldn't really hold themselves back. And I think that's so wrong.
Yeah.
We need to stop that culture, and we need to fight that culture
Yeah.
of, every child is even beautiful, every child is cute, and we need to really stop that culture. So I think, when you said it, I just thought it's an opportunity to talk
To
about
bring
this.
it up, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree with you, because I know, like, I know so
Mm,
many times where people go for barka, when someone gives
mm,
birth and you go to see the baby, and the first thought they have
yeah,
is, this baby is ugly, this baby is too black, this baby.
yeah,
And I'm like, you just went to see a baby. The mother has gone through one
mm,
of the most traumatizing experiences of her
exactly.
life, and all you care about is the look of
Yes.
her baby.
Subhanallah.
The baby that you're
Subhanallah.
not going to feed, you're not going to
Yeah.
chances are you may never even see the child again until he's like 5 or 6, but you want to tell her how her baby is not good enough already. This person just came into
Exactly.
the world and you
Subhanallah. And
wanted
it's so against, it's not a culture that is aligned with our faith.
to
So it's subhanallah. You think about it, how people do those things, and
Yeah.
we need to speak more about it.
But
And
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. It's quite very
yeah,
important. And
mm,
speaking about culture, like you rightfully mentioned, that being Muslim and being from northern Nigeria,
mm,
I think our perception of confidence is there's a there's a blurry line between confidence and arrogance.
mm,
Most confident people are perceived as arrogant.
mm,
And I think even I can be guilty of this. I speak from my own personal experience because I have seen very bold people that at some point I'm thinking, is this really being bold or is this really, crossing that line? So, how are
mm,
we able to differentiate? And not just even that, even for myself, I find myself constantly checking, constantly asking because Islam is a religion that promotes humility. It's humility in everything you do. And our culture in Ariwa is the same. We are very conservative people. We're not meant
yeah,
to be, loud and shouty about things that
mm,
we're doing or we do or our achievements and stuff like that. And
yeah,
from a business point of view, I find that I struggle with that a lot because sometimes
mm,
um, I when I was working with my a business coach, Coach Osman, he would always tell
mm,
me, "Come out and tell people that you've done this, you've achieved this," and I would
mm,
always cower at the thought that is this me showing people that I'm confident and they should trust me, or is it just me being arrogant? So I'd like to
yeah.
know how can we differentiate the two?
It's it's quite interesting because there's a huge difference between there's a thin line rather between confidence and overconfidence.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of times people uh, mix up the two.
Yeah.
Confidence is about having, understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, being able to be self-aware and understand your limitations and where to push yourself and where not to. It's it's the two side of the coins. But a lot of times people can cross over, because
Hmm.
like I said, it's a spectrum, and people can cross over from trying to be confident. They become overconfident, which borders around arrogance. So I think as much as yes, you said sometimes we need to talk about ourselves. We need to we need to um, we need to cheer ourselves. Because we need to become our own cheerleaders. Because of course, in the north, so you talked about being a northern Muslim. We're brought up in a way where we should be modest. We should have like a realistic um, projection of how we see ourselves and how we put ourselves out there. But at the same time, sometimes I think it's just creating that balance, because I think we've taken it to a different level where we shy away from talking about ourselves completely.
Yeah.
You know, but then one has to also be careful so that you don't cross over, because when you become too arrogant, you can actually miss out on a lot of things, because when you're too arrogant about yourself, it creates a blind spot where things that you'll start having an unrealistic outlook about towards yourself, where you become overly arrogant that I'm this and that and that, that you know um you tend to forget who you are. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, where they become too arrogant about themselves, that they tend to they become too arrogant about themselves, that they begin to not see their weak sides, or because they're too so into themselves, that they don't see anything. They become self-centered. That's the word I was looking for. They become completely arrogant and self-centered, that they don't see any other thing. So I
Yeah.
think balance is very important. I'm somebody who really believes in the concept of balance. In everything that I do, I try to create balance where I want to be confident, but I don't want to be confident that I become that I start, become, that I'm in other people's faces, that people start to get irritated. And maybe that's who I am, but I just feel that it's important that we create that balance where we don't go overboard in anything that we do. And I think the concept of auditing or checking yourself from time to time can really help in this situation where you're confident, you talk about your skills, your abilities in order to push yourself out there for people to see your value. And yes, it's true that um bring out those values for people to see, how would they know that it's actually even there?
Yeah.
So but there's a balance, there's a thin line, there's a thin line where you can cross over. And when that happens, that's why we see, the things that we see in our leaders, where they're so full of themselves that they don't even see otherwise. 2 days ago, I was in Kano, and interestingly, I met somebody
Mhm.
um, who is a relative, distant relative. I was meeting for the first time, and he talked about how much capacity he has, and it was so interesting that the way he talked about his capacity was quite interesting. But we need to have, like I said, most importantly, a realistic outlook on
Mhm.
ourselves, because when you don't do that, it's very easy to lose track of where you're going. And when you lose track of where you're going, then unfortunately so many things will go wrong. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's important to just have that vision somewhere, that you have to keep auditing yourself. You have
Mhm.
to allow give room for feedback. I think that's extremely important, because
Yeah.
when you're too arrogant, when you start becoming arrogant, you will not give room for feedback. But be able to allow room for feedback, be able to listen to other people's opinions or views about yourself, and then also be able to filter the constructive ones and the destructive ones, and try
Mhm.
not to take it personal in the process, because a lot of times when we personalize those processes, then unfortunately we will not be able to see what people are trying to say, because we've already personalized it, and then you start to feel attacked, or you start to feel attacked or insecure about your own feelings.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important that you're able, that in the process, that we allow other people to also give us feedback, have
Yeah.
an open door policy where we listen to people, and sometimes even ask, from time to time, I try to ask people their opinions, what they think about certain areas of my life or certain things that I'm doing, because it's something that I used to struggle with. Maybe to an extent, it's still a work in progress.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, because I can be a bit of a sensitive person, which is something I've been really working on.
Yeah.
So it's understanding who you are, and be able to find ways to navigate around it, and then try, most importantly, have a growth mindset where you're focused on um, taking feedback, learning new things, and growing every day
Yeah. Absolutely.
continuously. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that very much. When you touched on feedback, it felt it felt very personal for me because I'm doing my postgrad in psychology,
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah, one of the things that I have struggled with is
Mm,
writing a critical paper, an academic
mm,
paper that is critical.
mm,
So, and it kind of shattered my ego in the sense because I've always prided myself in being a good writer. I've received
mm,
awards for writing
mhm,
and all of that. And now
mhm.
here I am trying to, well, to be fair, I've only ever written fiction. Now here I am,
Mhm.
critically analyzing academic papers, reading
Yeah.
20 papers and trying to understand even the academic tone of it and everything.
Yeah.
So every time we write papers, we receive feedbacks.
Yeah.
And one thing that has stood out for me is every day, the moment I get the notification that your feedback is available, when I
Mm.
open it and I see my grade and I read the feedback the first time, it always feels like an attack the first time.
Yeah.
So what I do is I just close it. I read through it just to get the sense of it, and I can feel myself get defensive
Mm.
when I see that the
Mhm.
marker said, "Oh, you didn't do this here." I'm like, "But it's right there." I'm getting defensive. But what I've
Yeah.
learned is I close it down after the first reading. I don't allow myself think about it again. I close it down. I shut it down for like 2 weeks, and then
Mm.
when I come back to it, it makes absolute sense, and I don't feel
Mhm.
judged.
Yeah.
I just see the errors that they point out, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, when you talked about that, I'm like, yeah, it in so many contexts, this is so applicable. And I feel like
Yeah.
another key point that has helped me navigate through what is confidence and what is arrogance is
Mhm.
confidence is always internal.
Mhm.
For me, confidence has
Yeah.
always been like, I know I've worked on myself with regards to
Mhm.
XYZ. And
Mm.
when I do it for me. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what people see or what they
Yeah.
feel. I do
Absolutely.
it for me and it makes me
Yeah.
feel good. And then when it comes to arrogance,
Evidence. Yeah.
I'm just saying it because I want people to
Mm.
validate me or to see me
Yeah.
in a certain light that may or may not be true. When I'm
Yeah.
saying when I'm saying, oh, I did this, I did that, it's mostly because I want when they look at me, I want to force a perception of myself on them. So
Of
that
them.
has kind of
Absolutely.
helped me,
Yeah.
like you said, sit down and I forgot the word you used, but it's like vet yourself, sit down and
Audit. Yeah.
yeah, audit yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. So when you say that, and I think that's
Mhm.
very true in the sense that when you're able to see the difference, that okay, this is
Mhm.
what confidence means. It makes me feel
Mhm.
good inside, and I don't care how people see this.
How people
And when
see.
it's
Yeah.
all about, oh, I really want to impress them. I really want them.
Mhm.
I mean, we all seek validation to some extent, but when it becomes your
Mhm.
sole purpose every time you sit down to talk about something or to talk about yourself, it's
Then there's
just
a
because
huge
you want.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, then you should know that no, this
Yeah.
is not adding up. There is a problem.
Yes.
Um, in our society, there is a perception that confidence should come with money.
Mm.
If you are not rich, you have not earned the right to be a
Mm.
confident person. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on this. If I am nowhere near the financial status of certain people. How can I still be a confident person? And yeah.
Unfortunately, people get it wrong. The same concept, it's the same concept that people have about success, where people feel that, to be success is attributed to money. You have
Mhm.
to have money to be successful. I mean, success, the moment you see success, a lot of times, people begin to see money. And I think, when you can equate it to so many things where
Mhm.
it's just how people see certain things. When you say leadership, the first thing that comes to people's minds is politics.
Yeah.
But I think people get it wrong. Being successful doesn't necessarily mean having money.
Yeah.
Being confident has nothing to do with money, because there's certain people that their idea or concept of confidence or success really has nothing to do with money. I know somebody that is quite successful in what she does. She works in an NGO. She has the money, but there's certain things that are not even important to her. You see her wear the most basic shoes, the most basic clothes, and
Mhm.
that's who she is, and that's what makes her happy.
Yeah.
And it's not really about the money. And there are a lot of people like that. People need to first of all define these things in their mind. What does confidence really mean to you? Confidence might mean different things to us in different ways.
Yeah.
As much as we know that it's strong belief in oneself, but our abilities and skills are all different. Our
Mm-hmm.
concept or of life is all different. So what confidence means to me at the basic level might just mean, yes, the confidence in my abilities, but those abilities will differ from person to person. And
Mm-hmm.
really, I think it's something that people need to disabuse their mind from, that there is
Yeah.
no relationship or connection when it comes to confidence and money. Um, because when it, just like I said, people, it's just that concept of believing in your skills and abilities. It could be that security out there who is just a confident person, confident in his skills and in what he does, and you know um or it could also be that person who is a pilot and is very confident in his abilities, and but they could come from different, there is no relationship really from my own perspective, when it comes to confidence and money.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people really get wrong.
Yeah.
But there's really no connection. You can have people that are just confident in what they do and really have no money, and but somehow they're just comfortable in their skin.
Yeah.
I think confidence is just being comfortable in your own skin,
Yeah.
understanding who you are, understanding your purpose in life, having some sort of moral compass,
Yeah.
and being able to move, with whatever you having that vision of where you're heading or where you're going, and being able to confidently and boldly take, being assertive in whatever you do. So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting when I hear people relate the
But
two together.
yeah, but this is quite common practice. Like you hear it a lot. It's like, oh, Bashidoko Sisi Amaya Zuzi, he wants
Yeah.
to plant
It
himself
was,
as an authority in XYZ when he has nothing. And
yeah.
I think you're absolutely right about it
Mhm.
being confident in your own skin. I
Yeah.
remember I was reading something, The Gift Source. Dr. Samia
Mm,
was writing about polygamy in her
mm, mm,
on her
mm.
page, and she
Yeah.
talked about how, because I think she's one of those people that really propagates healthy polygamy and how to navigate it and all of that. And she
Mm,
talks about one of the main things that helped her was because even before she got in there, she had worked on herself so much, on her confidence.
mhm,
So
mm,
she didn't see it as a threat to, it wasn't an unhealthy competition, it wasn't a threat to her
mm.
existence as a person. She
Yeah.
didn't see it like she had to start questioning everything she knew or everything she believed about herself,
Yeah.
because she was already confident. And
Confidence.
I
Yeah.
just found it really amazing that she was able to connect the two. Like,
Connected to interesting. Yeah.
yeah, because she was so confident in her own skin that the fact that her husband taking another wife didn't make her doubt herself. It didn't create any amount of self doubt for
And
her.
it's
It
so
was more,
interesting, yeah, because a
yeah,
lot of women, when they go through that kind of experience, the first thing is they start doubting themselves. You find out
exactly.
that a lot of women, in the work that we do, I'm sure you know this,
Yes,
because of the work,
absolutely.
when you meet, when you have to, coach or counsel people in that are going through, which is what you find out that a lot of them start asking questions like, I had to ask him, is it me? Is it something I've done? Is it,
Exactly.
And I think, we need to, when you're confident, you begin to ask different questions, because you start to see, okay, what is it, are they, it's more or less for some people, it's more or less, not so much about, what have I done wrong, but about, the other person,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
more
It's a
about the
choice
other
he
person,
made and
the
it's
choice.
his choice.
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. I think
So
that's a powerful
I
message. Yeah.
think, yeah, I think if women start to see it, build their confidence, and that's why the concept of personal development for me, I think when I found personal development, the concept of growth really resonated with me a lot,
Yeah.
because I just found out that if one can push themselves in that area to develop themselves, so many things become a lot easier. Few years ago, when I was, I found myself even running multiple. I mean, I had run multiple businesses because I start this business, I drop it, I start that
Mhm.
one, and I drop it because I was constantly questioning the things that I was doing
Yeah.
because I felt, everything that I was doing wasn't just coming together. Um, and the moment that, that perception or that concept and confidence, in my own skills changed, everything began to fall in place. I started to, I started this business and of coaching and training, and mashallah, everything just changed because my concepts and perception towards life changed. And I think for me it was more or less the fact that I started to believe in myself. I started to become more confident in my skills and my abilities, and that changed a lot for me.
Yeah.
um, so I think it's important when we start to have a different outlook towards life, everything begins to change in a more positive way.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
even in terms of our spirituality, find out that your connection, even with God, begins to change when you're more confident,
Yeah.
rather than when you're less confident. Because when you're less confident, even when asking for things, there's that part of you that is
Yeah.
telling you, I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't deserve
Absolutely.
this. And when that concept is there, definitely, you'll find out that, it's almost as if you're attracting who you are, not what you want.
Yeah.
And when that is happening, you start to feel, that's when people start to feel, oh, okay, they don't get the, they've been praying and praying and things are just not coming together. But in the process of praying, how committed and how much commitment did you have, how much conviction did you have that Allah is listening to those things that you're asking for and believing that he's going to make those things happen. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very powerful. Relating it back to dua, because I
Yeah.
never made that connection until you
Mm,
said it now. But
yeah.
yeah, I have seen massive transformation in the way I make dua from the person I
Mm,
was, say, 10 years
yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
where yes, of course, it's been drilled into us all our lives that whatever you
Mm,
want, you ask Allah. But constant, like you said, the battles of life, failing
mm,
and missing
mm,
out, and all of those things would force you to think, yes, I made dua, but you know, it's kind of a limiting belief in the sense that
yeah.
I would think Allah just answers the dua he wants. Like it's not really
Mm,
the power of my dua or how much I
yeah.
persist on it. But then
Mhm,
I have seen it's a huge shift for me because when I
mhm,
pray now, Alhamdulillah, and I hope the same for everyone. It's
mm,
just, I just know it's a matter of when. It's sort of like
yeah.
when you write a list of to dos or goals,
Mhm,
you just know
mhm,
that it will come. It's
mm,
just when. So it's sort of that. And
mhm,
yeah, I think that's really absolutely beautiful. Thank you for
mm.
pointing that out. So I wanted to touch a little about self doubt because you've mentioned it all through the conversation, and I wanted to have an understanding. I know in the beginning you said it's sort of it roots from childhood mostly, but is it possible to develop that even in adulthood?
Absolutely. Like I said, our experiences can shape us. There's some people that are, that are confident or, in their skills and abilities and certain, and especially for us women,
Yeah.
where you see that, I'm sure you've come across them, or,
Mhm.
where you find, somebody who is confident and, in their own skin, and somehow they go through certain experiences. And why I said, especially women, women go into marriage, and we all know how, um, the ups and downs in our society, how
Yeah.
marriage is perceived, or how people, the kind of challenges that women go through. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times, you find women who start out very confident, but then they go into difficult marriages,
Yeah.
and, they start to lose that confidence and
Mm-hmm.
start doubting, they begin to doubt themselves because of the experiences they've gone through. And for some, it might not necessarily be the marriage, it might just be an event or an experience they've been through in life, which could come in different ways, where that begins to shape who they are even in their adulthood. So yeah, definitely, it doesn't just happen, for children. Even in adulthood, it can be altered at some
Yeah.
point.
Okay. All right. Coach Rain, I'm gonna ask you a question that I think is on everyone's lips right now. Does it ever go away?
I think naturally, there are situations that we will find ourselves, regardless of how confident we are.
Mm-hmm.
Self doubt is a normal thing.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't stay on for so long, definitely you're going to go through certain experiences in your life, no matter who you are, where you feel some level of self doubt.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's how long it stays with you. We go through different experiences. Every day is a new leaf, and every day we tend to find ourselves in different situations, different experiences,
Yeah.
um, and those experiences can come with different. They come, trials, and life comes, in different waves.
Yeah.
So definitely we will all go through certain situations where we will feel some level of self-doubt. What is not good
Yeah.
is, when you stay there for too long,
Mhm.
when the feeling, because self-doubt is a feeling,
Yeah.
we'll definitely have that experience at some point in our lives, maybe not even once.
Yeah.
But how long you stay there, for some people, it becomes, just like I mentioned earlier, it becomes their life,
Yeah.
where everything they do is centered around, that. And
Yeah.
it sort of, shapes their experiences. So whatever they go through, they put it through the lens of that doubt, and
Yeah.
it consumes their lives. Um, but when you're able to manage it in a way where you do not allow it to consume you, you go through it, it's a feeling, just like you feel anxious, just like anxiety will be some level of it, even stress some levels of it is actually good for the body. But when it totally consumes the body, that's when it's not good. So it's the same concept too with self-doubt. We will feel it at certain experiences, but most importantly is to create coping skills and mechanisms that doesn't allow you to stay there completely. When you feel it, how do you relate with it? How do you um, come out of it? Do you stay there for too long? Do you allow it to stop you from taking certain actions? Do you allow it to stop you from moving forward? Those are the important things that one needs to check. But as long as it comes as a feeling, like every other feeling that we have, because we go through hundreds of them. When they come, you deal with them at that particular time, and it's not an issue when you just don't allow it to just take over your life completely. So
Hmm.
it's difficult to say, will it ever go away? It's a tough question, because I believe at some point we will feel it.
Yeah.
um, but most importantly is how we relate with it when we
Yeah.
feel it, that matters.
Mhm. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Um, I think two takeaways for me here. The first is you saying, does it really ever go away? Um, I think it was a soft no. It doesn't. And maybe that sounds really sad for someone who's really battling with it right now. But also, what it tells you is that even the most confident person you can think about definitely experiences some form of self doubt. The most confident, the most successful, the most powerful people at some point they go through some sort of self-doubt, and that humanizes them for you, and you see that, oh, they're not so different from me. And like you
Mhm.
said, whatever success looks like for you, you see that they're not so different from me, and if they can do it in spite of all the doubts they carry, then I can be able to do that.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I recently realized that when you said your relation with the self doubt, how you relate with it, and all of that, it just took me back, because recently, just very recently, I realized
Mhm.
that my self doubt actually, they have voices. I know exactly who I hear, who I
Mhm.
see. Like, these are people I know. It's just
Mm.
funny that I never made that connection until
Mhm.
recently, but I know
Mm.
exactly who I'm thinking when when I make a post on Instagram, or just do something
Mm.
out of what I would
Mm.
ordinarily do. I know
Yeah.
who exactly I think might be
Thinking of,
judging me,
yeah.
or what they might say about it. And
Mm.
it made it very interesting for me, because the first question I asked myself is, why are you so sure that they are saying it or they are thinking it?
Yes. Mhm.
Chances are they may not even be saying it.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
the second thing was that, even if they are, why is it so important? What
Yeah.
is it about their voice that is so important, that can
Important.
creep into your mind and
Yeah.
silence your own voice?
Mhm.
You give them so much power that their voice is so loud that you don't even
Yeah.
hear yourself or what you
Mhm.
want.
Mhm.
And it just led me to say, like, there's just two things you need to do, honestly, in life. Most of these things that come up that, trigger self-doubt for you, I just
Mhm.
started to see it in this way. I need to check with two things. First, I need to check with Allah. Does this
Mhm.
transgress against Allah's laws and
Mhm.
everything? And if the answer
Mhm.
is no,
Yeah.
then if the answer is no, then the next person I need to check with is myself. Does it
Yeah.
make me happy?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the point is, when
Absolutely.
you're checking in with Allah, it covers everyone else, because that's
Mhm.
the amazing thing about Allah. He protects
Mhm.
everyone's right. So when you're
Mhm.
checking in with Allah, you're also
Mhm.
when you know that, no, this isn't sinful, this isn't going against the teachings of the deen, then you know that everyone else is protected, everyone that
Mhm.
matters. And then
Yeah.
I'm checking in with myself, and that way I'm just confident that, okay, this is fine. Whatever anyone wants to say, they can say it.
Yeah.
Chances are they're not even saying it, or they're not even
Mhm.
thinking it. It's just like you rightfully pointed out in the beginning of the conversation. Our mind
Mhm.
tends to hyper focus on the negatives. Maybe they're
Mhm.
not even thinking about you. And even if they are, why is it so important? It's important for you
Mhm.
to sit with yourself and ask these questions. Why is it so important to me that what they say should be more, I should place a higher
Yeah.
status on their words than on what I
Yeah.
want?
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting. For me, I used to, because like I mentioned earlier, I said I'm naturally, my default mode is sensitive,
Yeah.
but it's something that I had to really start working on a couple of years back to, because everything can just be personalized easily, and
Yeah.
the experience one is thinking. And I could totally relate when you said, I will be posting. I used to feel that way, when I post. I would go back, and even check what people as how many likes, what people are saying, what's in the comment section.
Mhm.
But I think, Alhamdulillah, for growth, you continue to grow, and for
Yeah.
me personally, I've gotten to a point that I drop it, and most importantly, I'm thinking of the people, because when we think about these things, if we become so self-centered.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I think for me that's the one biggest realization, that we personalize these things, even though we're trying to do it to support other people, to help other people, but somehow you just centralize it and
Yeah.
focus more on yourself without, and in the process you forget about the people that you're actually doing it for, people that you're
Exactly.
doing it to support, that
Yeah.
you become so self-centered that it's actually for them, but at the end of the day all you're thinking about is yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, being able to have that realization helped me in the process of detaching myself from these things.
Yeah.
Um, and, like I mentioned earlier, self doubt is normal, but most importantly, we need to understand that it's not our identity. It's just, if you're able to recognize that it's a is a momentary feeling,
Yeah.
and it's not, a permanent truth about, who you are, then
Yeah.
it makes it easier to move forward.
Yeah.
Understanding that it's just a feeling, it comes and goes like
Yeah.
so many other feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't really define who I am. It doesn't
Yeah.
really, it shouldn't define how I live my life, or, but most importantly, if it's being able to, remove those barriers, and then the concept of validation. I think that's really important, because if you're able to learn to, yes, we will, that there's situations where we'll need some, it's also a natural thing to want validation in certain things, but it's not, it shouldn't be like the center focus.
Yeah.
One needs to be able to remove validation and
Mm-hmm.
stop seeking validation from others, and just continue to affirm yourself
Yeah.
and believe in yourself, more than focus on those external factors or things that
Mm-hmm.
pump you up externally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the beautiful takeaway from this is also that the more you're able to adapt ways to navigate through it, to be able to do things in spite of the doubts that you feel, is that the more and more you show up, the more and more you do things, you
yeah,
realize that those other voices, in my case, like I said, I was able to
yeah.
identify who exactly they tend to become quieter, and my
Mm,
own voice becomes louder. So
louder.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
absolutely.
I tend to hear myself more than I hear them. Yes, sometimes it will come
Mm,
up and they'll be like, "Don't you think this person is gonna?"
yeah,
But then my but my voice is a lot louder now. It's a lot more confident,
yeah.
and it's telling me that, "Come on, just do this.
Let's
You don't
move
even
it.
need to think about these people. Just do it." And
Yeah,
we're doing it. Alhamdulillah. Um,
alhamdulillah.
yeah. Do you think there's a
Okay.
relationship between personality and confidence? Because some people would say, oh, I'm introverted. And for them, maybe
Yeah,
that translates to not being outspoken and, not
yeah.
being bold and all of that. These
Mhm.
confidence is mostly more associated with extroverts, I think.
Mm. It's interesting because it's an area that I love talking about.
Really? We should have
Behavioral,
started
yeah.
there.
Yeah, behavioral analysis.
Hmm.
The interesting thing is that naturally people talk about introverts and extroverts in different ways, where in a certain light, where when they talk about introverts, the first thing people think is that a non-confident person, an extrovert, a confident person. But until I started learning, I did a certification to become a trainer and a consultant in behavioral analysis. Then
Hmm.
I really, and, and that's why I said it's an area that I really enjoy. It was something that, a realization that came to me. Most people just put people in boxes. But it was
Absolutely.
until I started that study that I realized that interestingly, there are introverts that can be very confident, and there are extroverts that can be not confident. One thing I even realized in the course of study is that there's some extroverts that in their loud self, let me put it that way, it's actually a way of covering their inadequacies. So
Yeah.
you can actually find people who are out there bold, and you find out that they actually have a lot of confidence issues, but their way of covering it is, by them being out there. I remember when I did, there was this program that I ran about 3 years ago. I ran this particular program, Thrive in Mind. And
Mm-hmm.
Thrive in Mind was focused on building self-worth, for women. And interestingly, I remember my first cohort, I had about 17 people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and out of those 17, there were two extroverts that I had on a call that I knew prior to the program. And quite interesting, during the program, the first session we had, we had a combination of, it was a hybrid session. So we had a combination of physical and online participants. And those two extroverts were both online. And it
Yeah.
was so interesting in the course of the discussion. They're usually the loudest in the room. If you're
Mm-hmm.
having a natural discussion, if you're just gisting and having a good time, they're actually the life of the room. But I noticed something, it was quite interesting. During the 2 hour session that we had, the first one, they were extremely quiet and didn't say a word in the session. And it was so interesting that as soon as we were done in that session, both of them at different times called me on the same day and
Mm-hmm.
poured out their hearts one on one for like both 30, 40 minutes. Um, and everything they were saying was that almost everything that was said in class, in the session, resonated with them. But
Mm-hmm.
they could open up, and like I said, naturally they're the life of the room. They're the
Mm-hmm.
life of the party. They're the ones that would normally take over the discussion if it's in a circle of friends or family. But interestingly, because it was in a more controlled session, they couldn't they couldn't come out. And it really made me think and made me want to even understand those set of people even more. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
them in particular, but that group of people. And that's when the realization actually really hit me that there are some extroverts that try to hide in their loudness.
Yeah.
They try to hide, their inadequacies, or at least those things that they perceive as their inadequacies in being loud. So
Yeah.
it's not like there's no hard and fast rule that says that just because you're an introvert you can't be confident. But the most important thing is that the realization that I came across, even in working with people, is that I've met some introverts that are very assertive, very confident, and can be very bold when the need arises. um,
Mm-hmm.
they can stand up for themselves, and then they draw back into their shells. And there are situations, and sometimes there are people that have, because they're different personality types,
Yeah.
and we can fall into one or more category of those uh, personality types.
Great. Yeah.
And yeah, so you find out that most people have a dominant personality and a secondary, a primary and a secondary personality, and depending on the situation,
Mm-hmm.
they can actually show up as different people. And people can blend personalities. You find out that certain people, where people, they find themselves in different groups of people, and they have different personality traits in different setups.
Yeah.
So personalities can be blended, they can be augmented, depending on the situation. And we all have our core selves, and we have, the mask, where, how we want people to perceive us.
Yeah.
And we have, our core selves, who we really are. And yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I could go on
We,
and on
we can
talking
feel
about
your
this.
passion for this. We should have started with that.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, I absolutely loved when you said sometimes extroverts in their loudness is kind of like a cry for help that most
Yeah.
people don't see, because it
Yeah.
even translates in a lot of mental health issues where you see that people who are the life of the party and all
Yeah.
of that, and tomorrow you
Yeah.
find, especially let's say in the context of Hollywood, then you find that not
Yeah.
too long afterwards, we find out, oh, they committed suicide and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
no one could have guessed they were going through something. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and I also love that you highlighted it's not like a black and white situation. It's not, you
Mm,
can't strictly just put
mm,
yourself in a box and all of that, because even like you said, you did a course on this, and even in the field of psychology, we find that the personality traits are not just limited to extroverts and introverts. It's like
yeah.
a huge spectrum, and no one
Mm-hmm.
is actually, it's very difficult to find anyone fitting into just one context. and
Yeah.
i think and I think it sort of even creates an identity crisis for a lot of people. I speak for
Mm-hmm.
myself when I say that,
Mm.
because I know that I know that I am an introvert. I thrive alone. I thrive when I'm,
Yeah.
whatever it is I'm doing, a project, whatever
Mm,
it is, I just love my space. I love to do it alone.
mm,
But at the same time, I think I pointed out in the beginning that I'm very bold. I'm very outspoken.
mm,
So one of the things this did for me is, because I'm bold, because I'm outspoken, I'll constantly
mm,
have people pointing out like,
mm.
it's a lot of energy to take in from someone that
Yeah.
doesn't like being around people. So it kind
Yeah.
of created this rift for me where I'm trying to decide, okay, because I'm introverted and I really don't want people to be too in my space, I think I'll just try and
Mm,
keep my opinions to myself and not
mhm,
be outspoken about it. And for the longest time, I did it. Of course, it's my personality. It doesn't go away. I would find myself
mm.
sometimes just bursting out and saying something. And
Yeah.
maybe everyone is like, whoa, she was quiet like 10 minutes ago. What happened to her? But yeah, it creates a sort of identity crisis. And I see that. So, our last question for today is, if I make a decision that I want to stop doubting myself,
Mm,
and I've heard everything that you've said, I want to show
mhm.
up as a confident Muslimah. What is the first step I can take? Just a tiny step that maybe won't feel like too much, but I'm still doing something, working towards it. What would it be?
The first step I think is for I would say the power of self-talk.
Yeah.
Um, how you speak to yourself can really shape your reality. Being able to reframe those negative self-talk, because we have these, I call them the demons in our heads. I don't
Yeah.
know if, if it's right, but we have these voices that we hear in our heads that constantly is, telling, that can keep telling you where things are going wrong, reminding you where you're not good enough and capable. So it's being able to reframe those thoughts. It has to start from there, because you have to first of all start internally, feeling, have that, being able to change that feeling towards, a more positive feeling.
Yeah.
It can really go, being able to treat yourself with some level of um, kindness, being compassionate towards yourself, because a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
You're constantly telling yourself, the voices are telling you that this is who you are, and you're also reinforcing what the voices are telling you through your beliefs and your actions.
Yeah.
So it has to start from it, from there. One has to start from, those self talks, be able to reframe those talks. When you hear them, be able to reframe them for something more positive,
Yeah.
and be more kind towards yourself. Because usually when we talk about self compassion, the first thing that comes to us is being compassionate towards others. But it's extremely important that
Hmm.
we learn to be also compassionate towards ourselves, be kind towards ourselves. So, and that's, I think, a starting point, being able to understand that, these voices and these beliefs are not they're not necessarily your reality, but if you allow them, they would shape your reality, and they will shape your thoughts and become your reality, rather.
Yeah.
So it's important that you start to replace them, affirm yourself, remind yourself that there are possibilities out there, that you're capable of being more and doing more. Um, Reminding of yourself that, Allah created you with a purpose, and you have to find that purpose and build your potential, build your skills. And I think if you start on that track, then things will begin to naturally, start, at least it's a starting point. I
Yeah.
believe it's the first step. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
And I loved when you spoke about reframing it, because I think there's a lot of research that shows that actually our minds are not able to tell the difference between our thoughts and what actually happened.
Yeah.
So if you feed into those thoughts of I'm not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
your mind just believes it, because
Of
it
course.
can't tell the difference that, oh,
Mm-hmm.
she must have done it and she's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So your actions will align with those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. But the moment you're able to reframe it, like you pointed out, if your mind is saying you're not good enough, you're saying, well, I'm just trying so I can learn. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe this thing that you did, there's no quality to it, and you are instead asking yourself, instead of seeing it as a form of failure, you're asking yourself, okay, how can I improve on this? What
Mm-hmm.
do I need to read on? What do I need to research on? Who do
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to be
Yeah.
better at this so that I can do better? So always
Mhm.
constantly seeing it as a learning experience, and like I said
Yeah.
in the beginning, like collecting data points,
Yeah.
using it to collect data points for how you can succeed in whatever it is you're
Mhm.
doing, from being a mother or wife, your career, whatever it is, just you being a better human. I think it's a very great way to start. Thank you so much, Coach Rahina. Before we go, I would like to ask if there's anything at all that you feel is really important, but maybe I didn't get to ask you and you'd like to share with us.
Well, I think we've had a very interesting conversation.
It has been,
Um,
it has been.
yeah. So,
Alhamdulillah.
but just one last thing before we go. It's something that I believe in that can really help us in whatever journey we find ourselves on, is to
Mhm,
ensure that you have a community and a support around you. Build a community of people, like-minded people that can support you. Um, Surround yourself with positive people, and positive, it's a positive people that you can lift each other, that can lift you and you can lift them, because
mhm,
that, there's huge um, value in, finding, a strong community that, you mentor each other, as, assist, some sort of sisterhood community where you come together and you learn and grow
absolutely.
from each other. I think
Yeah.
you need to also audit, your circle, and see those that lift you, those that don't, and be able to make an informed decision based on your findings.
Mhm,
um, I think it's really important. It goes a long
yeah.
way,
Yeah.
because if they say you're an average of, the five people that you find yourself around. So if you're
Mhm,
around negative people, five negative people, then you're probably the sixth the most negative person you're going to find around. So it's
yeah.
really important that we find ourselves in a community of, people that can lift us. Because it's
Yeah.
very easy for a lot of times to want to be in a community where you become the local champion, where everybody is looking up to you.
Yeah.
So we have to learn to put ourselves in communities where we are also looking up to other people. So
Mm,
I think that can go a long way in
yeah.
helping boost
Absolutely. An environment that challenges you to be better and better every day. I so agree with that. And I
your.
think I'd just like to add just a little to that. I think when you even said finding communities and all of that to protect that energy that you want to commit to, I think
Yeah.
even with social media,
Mm,
it helps if what you want to get to or what you want to achieve, you surround yourself with that kind of energy, content that will feed into that energy, not content that will keep zapping away the energy and,
yeah.
draining you and making you feel like, okay, yeah, just like you said, everything you said. And I think that's an absolutely beautiful ending for this
Mm.
episode. It has been a powerful conversation. Feels like we shouldn't stop, but yeah, unfortunately, time is not our friend, or it is our friend, but in this case, it's. So thank you so much, Coach Rahina, for giving us the time and the opportunity to find this conversation, to have this conversation with you. It has been enlightening. I have learned so much, and I'm pretty sure the Her Space community has learned so much from you as well. I'm sending you so much of my du'as and barakah, and praying that Allah protects you and your family, and places more barakah in everything that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on this space. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. You have made it all the way to the end of this episode. Your support means everything to us. Help us achieve our goal of becoming the number one health and wellness podcast in Africa and the world by engaging with the podcast. Like, subscribe, and share it with the people that you love. And if you'd like to connect with our guest speaker, you'll find their contact information in the description box. We truly appreciate you for being a part of the Health Space community.